Okay, awesome. So Emma, I was just mentioning to everyone while we were waiting for you to come back that you had spent some time at Fitbit. So tell us a little bit about what that was like.
Yeah, so I worked at Fitbit for about 3 years. They're based in San Francisco. And so that's where I worked on a lot of products, including their iOS, Android, and web products. So I got into Fitbit because I had been working at a small company called Fitstar, which was acquired by them. And so I was working on all of their software products around trying to get people to work out daily and connect software to their physical devices.
And of course, this particular topic, as I mentioned to you, was of interest to me because what had happened is, sorry, I just want to end my video on my iPad here so that I don't interfere with what we're doing here. Um, I'm trying to track the comments at the same time. So anyway, let's just see. Maybe I can do that without necessarily being connected to this. Not a problem. That's not going to work, it seems. So I'll catch it on the screen. So just for everybody that's watching, remember, as we go through this conversation with Emma, you're more than welcome to ask any questions and stuff. And it'll be great because this is the format that we're wanting to encourage is conversations that can actually expand our vision about the future of work and all that kind of thing, which is great. And I just want to say hi to Anya and Gerard and a couple of people that have joined us. So you were working for a company that was acquired by Fitbit. It seems to be a trend that these large organizations have, right? When they need the expertise, they just acquire it.
Yes, yeah. So they were trying to get more into the software space. And so we were a small team of, I think, 15 to 20 people when we were acquired. I was the only designer on the team at that time. And then Fitbit had like 50 to 100 designers and a lot more engineers. So it was interesting coming into the company from that perspective.
So if you had to look back at your days at Fitbit, what would you say was sort of your best memory of working with the company?
Yeah, I think my favorite things that we did were we would do these product sprints to figure out what people wanted to see from the company internally. And so each person would break up into a team of about 3 people and talk about a feature that they'd like to see, just because at a big company, you have all of these ideas that don't always get brought into the public eye. And so before Amazon Alexa was a skill set that a lot of I partnered up with a product designer and a product developer, and we created an app on Amazon Alexa so that somebody could do a daily workout for 10 minutes in the morning using all voice controls. I think now that's a lot more common, but at the time it was really cool to have the leeway to experiment with that kind of thing during the work hours.
Okay, so I want to just ask you about working with them. Were you working as a co-located team? In other words, you were all in the same building at that time, or what was the setup like?
Yeah, so the team that I was on was pretty flexible because we had a lot of engineers that were located a couple hours outside of San Francisco. And so we had 2 days a week that were remote okay. And then we had 3 days a week where we were all co-located in the same office. And so I felt very comfortable working from home whenever I needed to. But it was nice to have a common space when we wanted to work together. I think that could have been very different had the company not been so focused on being in the same location.
Okay, so talk to me a little. When I ran across yourself and Philip on Instagram, I noticed that there's a highlight that you have in your Instagram stories about the decision that you guys made to go and become freelancers. Now, talk to me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so we had both been living in San Francisco for about 4 years. Philip was at a previous company that he started called Staffjoy, and I was at Fitbit. And we were both wanting to experience the world of technology and work outside of San Francisco, because there it really is so focused on technology, and that's what everyone's working on. And so we left San Francisco we made money by being freelancers full time, and we went to different cities around the world. So We were in Mexico City and Buenos Aires and London and Barcelona, and then a lot of places throughout the US and the rest of the world as well. And that was just so that we could learn how to be really good remote workers, communicate asynchronously, and still focus on our careers while we were doing that.
So that's really interesting. So can I ask you that experience of actually being a digital nomad and traveling and working at the same time? Do you think it's such a massive leap for people, or with the technology that we have now, is that becoming more commonplace, do you think?
So I think it's really easy to relocate to a new place and still continue your same career with the same hours generally. The thing that is harder is if you're trying to jump from place to place every couple of days or even every month. I think that's a lot harder. The way we did it was we would spend 3 to 6 months in each place. And that meant that we really got a feel for the culture and the community, and we got to connect with other technologists. We had a co-working space, a gym, a permanent place to live. So I think you do still need those basic things to be a productive worker. But the technology that's out there, like Slack and Twist and a lot of other apps that allow you to work remotely, it's easy to just jump in and start working as soon as you land in a new place.
So I want to come back to that, because at the end I want to ask you a little bit about, you know, your insights around where you think we're headed as far as the workplace is concerned. But you know, during this period, you co-founded with Philip the Moonlight Work site. So talk to me a little bit about that. How did that happen, and what does Moonlight actually do?
Yeah, so we started Moonlight out of our needs as freelancers. So after we left San Francisco and started freelancing full time, we saw this big need for this platform to exist. And so Moonlight is a professional community of software developers, and our mission is to help the world work together to build the future. And so companies join the platform to join our membership and access our community of vetted developers and product designers. And then they hire them as contractors and full-time employees. And so this started with just us working in a distributed way with companies around the world, and then really grew outside of our own network. And now it's a fully functioning automated app where people can bill hours and get invoices. And it's an amazing sourcing product for companies who are hiring around the world.
Okay, so that's fascinating. So it's very similar to like an Upwork kind of environment, sort of, or what is the big difference, would you say?
Yeah, so I think there are companies like Upwork and TopTool and Hired and a few others that are helping companies hire developers. And Upwork and a TopTool are both helping companies outsource work. So you have an MVP product that you need to get done, and you send it to someone, they do it, and they send it back. And the insight that we have is that people really like working together and actually being part of that process. And so we're mostly working with technical founders or technical product managers who want to bring someone onto their team to collaborate with and build really good software. So it's not just outsourcing to anyone out on the market. We're vetting these developers, and it's much more of a long-term relationship where people can continue working together, either long-term contract work, short-term contract work, contract to hire, or full-time employment.
So I know when we were talking about this interview, you were mentioning to me that, you know, to get developers to join onto Moonlight is actually pretty a simple process, really, because so many of these developers, like yourselves, if you think of it, are wanting this freedom, right? And would you say that that's kind of a general trend that you will see going outside of developers, maybe just people in general? What's your view?
Yeah, so right now Moonlight is really focused on developers just because we both have a background in software, and so it's the first vertical that really makes sense. But I think really any knowledge worker who can work online and be an individual contributor, this model could lend really well to. And the new generation of workers that are coming up are really expecting more flexibility and freedom in the way they live their lives, both professionally and personally. And so I think people still want to work really hard and they want to have a career. They're expecting that they can have a more fluid lifestyle in where they work and exactly what time they start. And they want to have more control over what this looks like. And so I think that's very different from a 9 to 5 where you're in the same office with someone looking over your shoulder the entire day.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you think of the experience that you've had, because you were able to travel and have more freedom, I mean, what it does is it actually just makes you a richer human being, and you get to enjoy life. But at the same time, as you correctly said, you're actually being able to contribute to the economy, and you're able to build your career. Now, I did want to talk to you about something here. My view is, and I want to hear what you think about this. My view is that organizations that sort out their workplace, in other words, they design, what is now known as a digital workplace, which enables people to flawlessly integrate with the organization, even if they're not in their location. My belief is that companies that are able to do that are going to become way more competitive, and because they're able to move fast as a result of this way of working. I just think that they're going to become more competitive. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, Stripe actually put out a report called the Coefficient Report, I believe, this year. And one of their main points was that access to developers is a bigger constraint for startups than access to capital. And so I think that really showcases that teams want to hire, they have the budget to hire, and it's something that they have to do to succeed. But it's something that's very hard for them. And what we found is that it is easy to get people to really successful developers who have a lot of experience to join the team if they have a more flexible access to the work. So if you're letting them have control over their days, there's options for them to move up in their career, even if they're not in the office every day. Those are things that make it much easier to attract talent from around the world. And they don't have to be within a 10-mile radius of where you're at. You can access someone who, even if they're in the same time zone, they're maybe in a different city or they're in a more rural area. And so it just gives you a lot more access to the kind of talent that you want to hire anyways.
Great. So I just want to take a quick little pause here, because I know some people have joined us and everything. So what's happening this evening, for those of you that have just joined us, and I see Philip has just joined us as well. So how's it, Philip? What we're doing tonight is we're just having, well, tonight in the South African context, but it's like in the afternoon in New York where Emma is. We're having a chat to Emma Lawler, who's a co-founder of Moonlight Work, and we're having just a chat about, how the company started and their experience in the whole freelancing environment and the move that they made, and we've just been chatting about what this means for organizations as far as talent acquisition is concerned. So if you have any questions as we're going here, if you want to ask anything about the whole freelancing thing, perhaps any questions around if you have questions around skills that you may need in order to be able to work like that, please do drop them in the comments, because we do want this to be an interactive conversation. So I just want to get back to your comments about companies and talent acquisition. So, I honestly do believe that obviously companies that have the best talent and have access to the best talent can obviously just perform so much better. If you think of the concept of having to be confined to a geographic location or having to relocate people, I mean, the sort of mission around that is simply insane, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, like I was saying before, if you can access someone who's not just within a 10-mile radius of where you're working, the talent pool just opens up a lot. And people can still have their home office or their co-working space, and you can still bring them together weekly or monthly or quarterly. And so you still get that access to the human social environment of an office. But that's something that we want to move into with Moonlight as well, is creating a community where people can come at any point in their career as a remote worker and really get value from the community, ask questions, get education, and grow in their career. It doesn't have to just be when they're looking for their next job.
So in your experience with the companies that you worked for as freelancers, when you were doing that and you were being able to have that flexibility and visiting all these different places, the companies that it was the most fun to work for as a freelancer, what did they have in place from a technology point of view that made that experience a really pleasant experience?
Yeah, I think the kind of teams that do well are ones that are really good at written documentation. There's a lot of services that let you just easily create documentation. So we use Intercom for some of that. We use Notion, which is a software I would recommend to any remote team. There's a video software called Loom that works really well. So you can, show your screen and have your face in the corner, and then you get that personal aspect to the feedback. But any way that you can create asynchronous communication forms and documentation that anybody can refer back to, that makes it really easy for a contractor or an employee who's remote to just tap in and quickly understand what's happening. I think Slack works well too, but some teams are so synchronous in the way they use Slack that it's a little hard to engage in that. But I think the teams who were open to really sharing their details and communicating clearly are the ones that have the most success with bringing on remote workers.
I wanted to tell you that a few weeks ago, I actually had an interview with the CEO of a company called Sakoko. And Sakoko, I don't know if you've heard of them, but anyway, so they've actually built this software with a floor plan, and you arrive at work and you can actually see your little avatar, and people can click on that and you can have a conversation. So they've tried to visually capture what it's like being at work, but in the virtual environment. My view is that kind of technology is just going to improve, and we are rapidly getting to the point where we literally, having an office is no longer like an absolute requirement. It's no longer essential. It's a nice to have. It's not something that you have to have in order to build your business. Now, I know that you have created something called your sort of vision with regards to the future of work, and just to, as a memory jogger, and for those of you that are watching this that want to go and actually have a look at this, which I strongly recommend you do, you speak about the future of work being flexible and independent, the fact that there would be distributed teams would become standard. You talk about work becoming asynchronous, and you've mentioned a few of those comments now. So talk to me a little bit about your vision of the future of work. What do you see happening to traditional brick and mortar environments that are currently there, and obviously these new breed of companies like InVision and Buffer and I mean Moonlight is one of those, and Automatic. What do you see happening to the future of work based on what your experience has been so far?
Yeah, so I think even having been in teams that are co-located, a lot of the tools out there are making it so it's very easy to switch in and out of having a distributed workforce. But I think that something that's worked really well as I've been traveling around in different time zones is to have a schedule where everyone has a semblance of a normal routine that's always happening. So maybe having a check-in in the morning in a California time zone and in the afternoon in a European time zone to make sure that everybody's aligned on the same tasks for 15 minutes. And then the time in between that is just individual contributor time where you are creating the thing that you're going to discuss the next day. And so for a long time, companies have already been using thinking around sprint planning, whether that's weekly or every 6 weeks, that allows everyone to understand what they're supposed to be focusing on every day. But a lot of these knowledge positions, like being a developer, working on digital marketing, even, these are things that you can do without being in the same room as somebody. And then I think a big part is also bringing the team together in a physical location every once in a while. So at Moonlight, we've talked about maybe having every Friday as people come together for a couple hours, or maybe even just once a day we do an offsite together. So you still get that human interaction and the social side of working together. But your day to day is really yours. And as long as you're getting your work done, you can do that in whatever way is best.
So I want to ask you, after having the experience of being in a co-located kind of environment. I know you said that you had quite a bit of flexibility at Fitbit, but there was that co-location aspect to it, and the experience that you had as a freelancer. Would you ever see yourself going back into a traditional brick and mortar commute kind of environment going forward?
I think it would be hard for me to go back to that after experiencing life where I have so much control over my day-to-day schedule and routine. And I think I get a lot more done than I ever have working in a co-located space because there are just so many fewer distractions. So I would say the amount of work that I would have gotten done in maybe a week previously, a 40-hour work week, sometimes I get that done in a day with my current schedule because I'm just really focused and I want to be as efficient as possible because it really, and so I think the reason I would go back to a co-located space is because maybe I wanted like a cushy Google salary or something like that. And that sometimes sounds nice, but the idea of being there from 9 to 5 every single day and eating all my meals there, that's not really attractive to me after I've experienced how productive I can be by managing my own time.
Absolutely. I must tell you, some time back, was sitting with an executive team, and they were talking about the need that they had in their organization to create an environment where people could actually work flexibly. And they said to us, and they said to me, they said, look, the reason we're having this conversation is because we are reaching out to talent, but these people are very reticent to sit in traffic for an hour or two every day to get to us. And most of these guys that we are wanting in the organization are saying to us, look, when you have created an environment where there's a little bit more flexibility, then you can call us again. So as we said earlier, I honestly believe that a company that can work this way, that can have, like freelancing developers, if they need them, are going to be way more competitive, and it's actually a competitive advantage more than a perk, actually. Now, I know that I said to you that we would keep this to 30 minutes, and you cannot believe how quickly time goes when you're having a fun conversation like this. But I wanted to ask you, so if people, what I'm going to do in the comment, not in the comments, I'm going to edit the link of this video, and I'll add the link to Moonlight so that people can actually go through and have a look at that. But on the social web, where is the best place to reach out to yourself, would you say?
Yeah, our website is moonlightwork.com, and then we're on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook as Moonlight Work as well. Moonlight_work on Twitter and Instagram.
Okay, so what I think I will do is I will actually put the links to those in the description as well, so that people can click through to that if they're wanting to have a chat to you about this topic. Emma, listen, thanks very, very much. I really appreciate the time that you've taken to read, and to agree to do this, because I think this conversation, if I think of what you guys are doing at Moonlight and the experience that you personally have had with this new way of working, I just think it's so important for people to hear this conversation, because we now live in this world where why can't you have this fantastic work-life balance, or live where you want to, as opposed to being crammed into some city somewhere.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think more and more people are going to start experimenting with it, and as soon as you try it, you see the benefits very clearly. And it really does work well if there's enough planning and strategy that goes behind it.
Perfect. So I'm gonna keep a close eye on what you guys are doing, and in the next month or 2 or 3, maybe what we can do is we can pick up this conversation again, and then discuss some of the insights that you've gained while building this particular business.
Yeah. And I would love to reconnect after we've been in New York for a while and start building out our remote team a little more, because I'm sure we'll have more insights after being located in a single place for a while.
One thing I did want to ask you before you go,
Mhm.
obviously in building Moonlight, you worked in a very distributed fashion, right?
Mhm.
That's, I mean, was just your standard
Yeah.
practice.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. So
Yeah. Do you want me to just explain a little bit about that?
yeah, please,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so because of the way we started Moonlight, which we were in different places every couple months, it really forced us to be focused on building a distributed team that's ready for that, and then also building a very revenue focused business. And so I think both of those things together mean that we have a lot of internal tooling and internal documentation where we could really bring someone in at any time and get them running on our software very quickly. We recently just brought in a salesperson to start helping us, and they were able to get started within about a day. So the ramp up time with distributed workers is really amazing, as long as you have spent the time to put that documentation together.
Great. So with that experience, I'm sure that as you build this out, it's going to stand you in really good stead. So Emma Lawler, thank you very much. We enjoyed this conversation immensely. And for everybody else, remember, if for those of you that do watch the replay of this, you are more than welcome to ask questions in the comments of this video. We'll obviously be notified of that when that happens. And then we can engage with you even after the live broadcast. So thanks again, and have a splendid afternoon in New York.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Bye.
Ciao.